I want to talk today a little bit about decision making, but on the more psychology, because I know a lot of you guys are probably, you're chipping away, you're making some progress, you feel good, and you're like, wow, this tool is incredible. But then you get to some blockages. You have some problem that you come upon. It could be something's not connecting, the prompt you're using isn't working, the ChatGPT isn't understanding what's happening, even though you're using screenshots. Has anyone had some frustrations with some micro details, even though they feel like they can get it 80% of the way there? I know that's how I feel sometimes, which is, by the way, exactly what happens regardless of whether it's famous or any other software you use or any other employee you use or anything you're doing in the whole world. I help authors write their books, and the same thing happens. The final little polishes are always the most difficult. So this is not new. This is not even interesting. It's very predictable. This is predictable in sports. This is predictable in art. This is predictable in anything you do in your life. To get that final 5 or 10%, it's always the difficult part. You guys have heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? So the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially it's this when you first start something, let's say this is your confidence and this is time doing something. So in the very beginning, you start playing the piano and you're really excited and you're feeling really confident because in 10 minutes you can learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. And you're like, wow, I'm great at the piano. I'm going to be a master. I'm going to be a virtuoso. Or you learn a couple openings in chess and you're like, wow, I'm really good at chess. Compared to what you were an hour ago, you're 100 times better than you were an hour ago. So in the very beginning of something, you're making such fast progress that you feel really confident. But then over time, you realize, oh, the grass is not as green as I thought it was going to be. Over time, you're like, this is actually difficult. And they call this the valley of despair and Dunning-Kruger effect. And then eventually you start to reach mastery and you get more confidence because you actually are good at it. So it's not ignorant confidence, it's mastery confidence. So you've probably experienced this in your life with everything that you do, whether it's parenting, like you, or any art or any skill or any software you've ever used. This is super normal. And one thing that I want to impress upon you, because I've been an entrepreneur for a while now, is that business is a bit like a video game where there's levels. And at every single level, you come upon a bigger challenge, a bigger boss, a more difficult level. And what happens is that most of the time people quit at that level because they keep trying, 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 and they keep on failing and they get frustrated. And so then they quit. And the people that end up winning are the ones that continue. I've heard a lot of business owners say this, that your only job in business is to stay in business. Think about it that way. Your only job is to just continue. It's like persistence. I wouldn't even call it discipline because discipline increases the speed of your learning. You're going to learn faster because if you're going to practice every single day versus practicing once a week, obviously, if you practice once a day, you're going to literally learn 7 times faster. So discipline speeds up the process. But at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is persistence. And not even consistency. Consistency, you can be consistent for a couple of weeks and then come back. It's being persistent. I am going to do this. It's certainty in investing. Investors don't want to invest in people that aren't certain that they're going to win. Now, they want to invest in people that are humble enough to know that, hey, I don't have all the answers and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to hire people that are smarter than me. But I'm certain that we're going to do this. So you want to have this certainty, this conviction that you're going to do it, but because you're going to be persistent throughout the entire process. There is a chance for you to sprint in the wrong direction or do the wrong things over and over again to the point that you're so broken that it's either you go bankrupt or you can't pay payroll or you can't pay your bills or you feel like such a failure that you give up. So you're trying to avoid this. You're trying to avoid bankruptcy and you're trying to avoid essentially emotional bankruptcy where you don't trust yourself. So I want to talk about where you spend your time with your business and also how you spend your money as it regards to your business. Because we all know this, that you're either going to, whatever you want in your life, you're either going to do it yourself by learning it, or you're going to pay someone to do it. And we do this for everything in our life. Most of us probably don't kill our own beef before we have a steak, or we don't farm our own artichokes before we eat our artichokes. And we're not learning how to make a car, we just buy a car. So this is how we just exist. We might not be aware of it consciously, but this is how we exist in the world. So I'm going to talk about essentially the economics of risk and making decisions. Alex always says that the way that he makes decisions is risk mitigation. So as a lot of people call this memento, remember death. You remember how you're going to be on your deathbed, and you think, what am I going to regret this $1,000 or this couple $100? Am I going to regret that late night that I really pushed? Am I going to regret trying my business? Am I going to regret trying another business? Am I going to regret getting a mentor? Am I going to regret reading that book? Am I going to regret trying really hard? And most of the time, no. Now, there's an extreme here. Everything's a bell curve. And if you're a bad parent or you're a bad spouse or you're not self-aware enough to be grateful for what you have and you're always wanting more, and then obviously that's not good. Then you will regret that. But if you're not where you want to be, essentially you have to look in the mirror and be like, what am I going to do about it? And you guys are all here because you're ambitious and you have business ideas. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but I know a lot of you guys are probably in a position because you've been with Famous for long enough, even if it's a couple weeks, where you've reached maybe a limit of what you feel you're comfortable with. And so now you have to make this decision. You have to either make a decision to pay for help, or you have to make a decision to put in the time that's necessary in order to learn the skill so that you can do it yourself. And that's it. Because there is an answer. It's funny, I've said this a lot of times, but with Famous, people say, could Famous do blah, 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 blah? And I found out that there's a couple of limitations to what Famous can do. Essentially, if it has to do with a hardware that doesn't exist, so for example, like you want my phone to be able to three-dimensionally scan something and then something like that. I want to build an app that does that. The software is beholden to the hardware of your phone. And so if your hardware on your phone doesn't have LiDAR, for example, then it's not going to be able to do that because it doesn't have the hardware. So that's where a couple apps I've seen, it's not really about Famous, it's about the phone or it's about the computer, it's about the limitations of the hardware. But pretty much everything else you can do. So whatever you're thinking, you're like, oh, can we do this? Yes, 100% you can do it. I've used the example in previous classes where Famous is like hiring the best computer engineer at Google. And so if you ask the best computer engineer at Google, hey, could we make a funnel that does this? And then when they log in, it automatically does this. And then they go through this quiz and then they get a chat bot and then they can talk to it and then it tracks where they are. Like if you ask this to the best Google engineer, the answer would be yeah. So therefore, since we already know the truth is that yes, you can build it, now the question is, are you going to learn it yourself? Or are you going to pay someone to speed up your process? And if you're going to learn it yourself, how much time are you willing to put into it? And how much frustration are you willing to put into it? So that's the context. What I'm trying to do is I'm going to help you guys make these decisions about whether or not it's worth it to either put in the time or put in the money to get help to speed up the time for whatever problem you're having or whatever thing that you want, whether it's finishing your landing page or doing some marketing and launching or fixing all of those small things with Supabase, or maybe even just getting strategic help because you understand what you want to do, but you can't really map it out. So either way, you have this goal and you have to decide whether or not you're willing to spend the time or the money to do it. So I'm going to give you a framework to think about this. So here's the deal. Everything that you do in your life is essentially a probability calculation. And so here's what I mean by that is whenever you're doing anything, you're taking any action, you're making a bet that consciously or unconsciously, you're making a bet that if you do this thing, it will give you the outcome that you want. It could be I'm watching Netflix, I'm hanging out, and I'm eating Oreos. So my bet is that if I do, that's going to give me some peace, some gratification. Maybe I can hang out with my family. I'm enjoying myself, and I'm going to be safe because I'm in my own house. For example, you are, whether you're not consciously making that decision, you'd probably go insane. If you were that self-aware all the time and like thinking about every action you took and like why you're taking it. But no, fundamentally, that's what you're doing. And let's take it to the opposite extreme. Let's say you are hiring an employee. So what you're doing with your hiring an employee is essentially like a retainer, or you hire an agency to do something for you monthly. You are making a bet that if I pay this person $3,000 a month or $5,000 a month, or maybe they're an executive and they get paid like $10,000 or $15,000 a month, if I pay them this, the ROI, the return on the investment for my company and my goals and my company's goals in my life will be worth it. So one is like feeling it's very obvious, it's a calculated risk, there's an ROI. If I put in this amount, I'll get this much out. But on the opposite extreme, you have just hanging out on a Sunday with your family, watching the football game, and you are still making a decision, a conscious decision with your time and your money. That decision will result in the thing that you want. So just stay with me here. It's important to be self-aware so that you can make the right decisions. And everything that you're doing is essentially making a risk calculation that if I do this thing, what's the probability that if I do it, I will get the outcome that I want. The problem, and we've talked about this in copywriting. What do we do in copywriting? If someone has a pain, like this is my problem, someone has a problem or pain or a goal, which is essentially pain due to lack. So it's not necessarily, let's say, I want to be gold medalist and I'm really good at tennis already, but I want to be the best at tennis. That's not really a pain that they have because it's not actually painful to be really good at tennis, but it's painful to them because there's a gap between where they want to be and where they are. And then what you do in copywriting is, if you guys remember, you draw out the line of time. And so you say, if you keep doing this for one day, yeah, it's no big deal. But if you keep on doing this for another 5 years, if you don't make a pivot here, there's going to be this really big gap. So this is like obvious with our physical health, where we're like, today I want to have Domino's and Oreos. But if you do that literally every single day, over the course of maybe 5 or 6 years, you might have heart problems or high cholesterol, or you might not be feeling very healthy if you eat food like that all the time. So we already know that it's fine to do this at one moment, but you're making the probability that if I do it now, it's not going to have these long-term consequences. And so we do this in both positive and negative all the time. So we have these decisions that we're making conscious and unconsciously all the time. And really what's happening, like the why behind why we do everything that we do, is essentially our DNA. So what does DNA want to do? DNA wants to procreate, it wants to continue, and it wants to survive. Everything that we do is essentially due to these core goals of our DNA. You guys have read like The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. And I know there's a spiritual element to life, and I'm not going to get into that. But my point is, at our DNA level, our instincts is that we are trying to procreate and survive. And then you have these core whys, these core things that motivate us, these core motivators that result from procreation and survival. And you'll notice that a lot of times that most of the things that in sales, for example, marketing, is that they touch on these core things is because they're really deep down. So I divided them. People want purpose in their life. They want to have meaning. They want to matter somehow. And that is related to procreation. Procreation meaning that I want to live past myself. I want to leave something behind. Now, procreation in this case literally means like having children, but there's a like writing a book, for example, or being a great artist, or having a company survive after you're dead is for, or being an inventor of some kind. The obvious version is your children. You can create something or some entity or some machine or some company or some piece of art or artifact that lives beyond you. Could be even idea, philosophical idea. And that's our desire to procreate in a kind of conceptual way. And that manifests itself in our desires to have a meaningful life, to be purposeful. And a lot of people have companies that are like, hey, I'm going to help people find their meaning and live a more purposeful life. And then a lot of us want to achieve mastery. So people get really obsessed with one particular thing. Oh, I'm Pokemon or Legos or some video game or Star Wars or woodworking or this one niche of certain movie genre or whatever it may be. People become, you all probably have some kind of obsession that you're like probably maybe the top 100 or 200 in the world at. Most people are actually top 100, 200 in the world at something. Even if it's like I'm the expert of my local whatever it may be. You've become a master of something. We have this desire to do this. And then obviously sex sells. We all want to have love and intimacy and that sort of thing, which relates to procreation. And then procreation also, freedom and status is both survival and procreation. And the reason why is because when you have freedom, you have the resources in terms of the physical resources to go out and take advantage of opportunities. And then you also can leave if you need to, which is help with survival. Status, the entire luxury industry is status. Louis Vuitton's business model is status. That's what they sell. They literally sell a bag, but they're selling status. Like a Rolex is status. That's all it is. So any luxury item, you're buying status. So why do we care about status? Deep in our DNA, we care about status because if we have status, it helps us survive and it helps us procreate. So that's the reason why status is actually very deeply fundamentally important. Whether you think that it's worth buying status versus earning it is a totally different thing, but nonetheless, that's the whole luxury market. Then you have safety, and safety is obvious. Safety is everything to do with safety, comfort and food and water and shelter. And in the United States, people buy guns or they buy houses, or all of this has to do with like safety. Now, I'm going to get to the point here. The reason why everyone is so obsessed with money is because all of them will help you get all of them. If we fundamentally want to survive and leave something behind, and this is then what essentially all marketing is and all sales is, like every product. When I talk about unique value proposition, usually your unique value proposition should help with one of these. The reason why everyone in a business is like, and it's a way of keeping score to an extent, but money literally helps with all of them. It helps with safety because if you have money, you could buy a house, you could buy guards, you could buy tons of food. Like money is all the way from safety all the way to purpose. With your purpose, you could give to charity, you can create something. You could, let's say if you're an author or something, you could buy a bunch of editors that can help you, hire some people. So money is the fuel, it's the oxygen to all of these things. So this is why don't be afraid of, oh, I want money. Money is the tool, is the fuel to get the things that really do matter in life. So now, what do I do to get this money in order to get purpose, mastery, love, relationships, freedom, status, safety? So if that's what we want, and we can't help but wanting these, and some people want more. My number one is probably freedom. Yours is, people have different proportions for them. But you want money or a business in order to get these things, which are totally valid, and you can't help but not want them. So if you want this, what do you want? And what are you willing to do in terms of time and money to get that? Akalesh says, money is power, but not peace. You can have money, put in S&P 500, buy a farm, and live on a farm. You can do it. Money's benign. Money is just a tool to do whatever you want with. I don't think money has anything there. But the idea here is, okay, so you have this, right? And then you're going to essentially make 3 decisions every single time. So you have financial risk calculations, then you have time risk calculations, and then you have status risk calculations, which I should probably call emotional risk calculations, which is essentially fear of failure. But the reason why you fear going all in, risking everything, your time, your energy, your money, a lot of times you're actually fearing like a status downgrade for yourself and for others because you think people are going to think of you as a failure. These are essentially like the risk calculations that you're making with every decision that you make. And the financial risk calculation is pretty simple. So if I put in X dollars, and in this case, this would be to hire someone, multiplied by the percent chance that this is going to get me to where I want to be. This is where you are now. This is where you want to be. What is the likelihood that I'm going to get the result that I want? Now, if you go back to one of my previous classes on leverage, what businesses you should do, I said bad business model is small customer base, very difficult to build, so you have very low leverage. Whereas a really good business is it's very easy to build and it has a huge customer base. So the higher likelihood, and then we talked about total addressable market in another class where I was talking about essentially Coca-Cola. And you have this market cap. So if you choose water or something, even if you only get 1% of all the water in the world, you're probably going to be a billionaire because the total addressable market is so big. So even if you win at something that's like that essentially everyone has this problem. So imagine you're like, I help lawyers in Miami with their taxes versus I help people who are depressed be not depressed. One, the total addressable market is massive, and the other total addressable market is very small. So even this tiny sliver of a large thing ends up becoming a large thing. So the financial risk calculation is actually relative to the business that you're building. For example, let's say you guys hired someone to help you finish this business. And by the way, if you're going to do a business, it's going to cost a lot to just have payroll. Between my businesses, I have $150,000 a month in payroll. So think about that. Before I get anything, before the business does anything, number one, there's $150,000. And payroll gets paid first, no matter what. So there's going to be risk. Once you get bigger, there's going to be a lot of weight on your shoulders as you're going to need help to build this thing. So you want to build something that has a very high upside. And here's the thing that you want to do here. is you want to essentially multiply this percentage as many times as it takes in order to essentially guarantee that you win. So let's say my goal is to have a company that does $1 million. Think about that. That's my goal, $1 million. And if I, let's say, pay $5,000 to some employee or some agency, or I get coaching or I get help or whatever it may be, and that gives me let's say 5% chance of getting the $1 million. Is that a good bet? So I spend $5,000 and it gives me a 5% chance to get a million. Is that a good decision? So the answer is it depends on margin, but just really what you want to do is you want to play this game. If this was a game in Las Vegas, what would be the logical decision here? To pay the ticket is $5,000 and you have a 5% chance of winning. But if you win, you get $1 million. What's the logical decision? The logical decision is to play it 20 times in a row. Because what if you play it 20 times in a row? If you have a 5% chance and you play it 20 times, what's the odds that you'll get $1 million? So hopefully this is a little bit of an aha moment, is that there are no guarantees. There's only probabilities. That's it. So what you're doing is you're saying, if I play this, if I spend this amount of money, what are the odds that I get what amount back? So what if this number is 200K? Logically, what you should do is you should play it 20 times and you get $1,000. I'm not saying this is what you do because this is such large margins, but a lot of you are, oh, I want to build this $10 million company. So I want to build a $5 million company. I want to build a $10 million company. Are you serious about that? That's the game you're playing. If that's the game you're playing in your brain, own it. Own it. Okay. I have this company that's going to make $1 million a year. Okay, amazing. I believe in you. But then what are your risk calculations in order to make a company that does $1 million a year? The answer is I'm not willing to risk anything, then you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Does everyone think that me and Alex are probably pretty good entrepreneurs? I could give you even more of my resume. The number of times that I have failed catastrophically and lost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars with the wrong bets is incalculable. So now, did I start with making a $10,000 failure here and a $15,000 failure here? No, of course not. But I started with, when I first started in copywriting, I lived in my car for 6 months in Big Sur, California, because I knew I wanted time in the winter. So I lived in my car and worked at a fancy restaurant. And I lived in the state park. So I took showers in the state park and then I would go work 12 hours a day and I would save up all my money so that I could take the winters off, so that I could practice, so I could have more time because I didn't have money. So I'd save so that I could practice becoming a good copywriter and a good writer so that eventually I could get good enough over time that I could get paid to do the thing. So I didn't have the money. So I worked really hard to save a little bit of money and then risked it with my time to get better because I knew at the end it was going to pay off. And it might not pay off for 10 years, but that's the game. Remember, I said persistence. So if you're really in your brain, I want to make $1 million company, but you're not willing to spend a little bit of money to get help to speed up the process, or let's go to this calculation. Maybe you don't have money. It's fine. Everything that you're doing that you're spending time on is also multiplied by a percentage chance that it will increase the chances that you'll get and again, the only reason why I'm using money, this is the reason why I said this, is because money can help with all of these. So you're like, oh, I want freedom. I want safety for my family. I want purpose. I want to learn French. Whatever the thing is that you want in your life, it's a lot easier if you have money. So I'm just using money as a way of keeping score. But the same thing applies to your time. And the time when it's easy is almost like free time. It doesn't even count. What counts is when it's really difficult, when you've done the prompt 4 or 5 times. What counts is when you're frustrated. And at those moments, when you tried 50 times or 100 times, like, what are you going to do about it? If at the end of the day, your goal is $1 million or $10 million so that you can give back to your community, start a church, a nonprofit, or whatever very altruistic goal you have, nonetheless, you guys are here because you're trying to start a business. And the way of keeping score in a business is money, because money is the exchange of value. So that means you're giving more value to more people. And I think a lot of us, it's not you, it's all of us, come upon these moments. And instead of being resourceful or understanding that it is absolutely necessary. The people that win the most have just failed the most. They've gone through the most pain. Think about athletes. Athletes have just gone through more repetitions of failure. That's all it is. The best in the world, they just have failed more often. That's what practice is. Practice is just failing over and over. It's even worse than failing. It's like trying something specific on purpose so that you can fail, so that someone better than you can point out why you're failing and how to improve it. That's what practice is. So it's not like a bug. It's not, oh my God, I was trying this and everyone said it was going to be easy and then I can't figure out how to blah, blah, blah. It's when that happens, your ability to stay calm, stay consistent, stay persistent for much longer than you think is reasonable is how you win. It is the way. Like Ryan Holiday's, the obstacle is the way. Has anyone read that book? It's not like obstacles are not as bad as you think, and obstacles are don't worry about obstacles, or when obstacles come, like journal about it. And, that's not what he said. He said, it is the way. It is literally the path. So when you are in a difficult situation with your company right now, or any company in the future, and I always think about this, whenever I'm in a really difficult situation with my business and I can't figure it out, whether it's a technical thing or an employee problem or anything. I actually become grateful at that moment. When it's the hardest, I actually become really grateful because I think, wow, what a privilege to be in a position that I can now solve this problem when most people won't. So whether it's you're risking your time, which is going to be way longer than you think, or your money to get the help to speed up the process, if you are serious about the goal, there is no other option. You are either going to have to take the financial risk or you're going to have to take the time risk, and you're going to have to do it 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 times. It's unrelenting. And then whenever you get to $1 million and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have my $1 million company. You're going to realize that you have $50,000 a month in software and you have invoices and you have accounting and you have more taxes. The idea was very different than the reality. Until you sell the company and live off of passive S&P 500 dividend income, until you get to that point, you're going to have to take the risk. There's also emotional risk here, which is essentially just like fearing this void of failure. Some of you guys, it might be specific, like my dad or my sister, or if I try this thing and I fail, my spouse is going to be mad at me or whatever. And then you're worried about how other people are going to think of you if you fail. Anyone that's done the thing that you want to do, no one will just, I promise you, no one that's ever done the thing that you want will berate you for failing in the short term. They'll be like, yeah, that happened to me too. Oh man, my business partner screwed me over. Yeah, I know COVID was difficult. Oh yeah, you can remember 2008. Oh wow. I remember when Facebook changed the algorithm and everything got screwed and I had to fire 10 employees. It's welcome to the club, guys. So I don't know if this is motivating, but that's not really my thing. I just am trying to give you the reality. Let me go through some of these questions. I saw some questions that were like, Daniel or Danielle, I'm new to Famous Island. Is there a pre-recorded video slide or printed manual available for the purpose to post? Yeah, you can go to launchyourbusiness.ai or it's in Discord, but super easy for what I got going on with Famous. Yeah, the thing is, people do sell their houses, and because it's like, what are you here for? What are you going to do? Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. You can't have both. You can't have all safety, simple, local community, don't do anything interesting, and just live your normal life and also have this extraordinary outcome. It's like completely insane. It's delusional. You're like, oh, I'm going to make all of these very not risky decisions. I'm going to be very tight with my money. I'm going to be very tight with my time. If I find a problem, I'm going to quit. But I also want all of the outcome. I want all of the good things. That's not how it works. That would be breaking the fabric of reality. You got to understand that if you actually are serious about this goal, I'll give you an example, like with softwares. So some people I see in the Discord chat sometimes people are like, oh, Famous, I tried this one and I tried this one, and they're like have this like angry energy. And I feel really sorry for these people because they just don't understand like what's happening. What you should do is try 6 different softwares. Why would you not? Just think about this. Just let's do the math together. So let's say you have a software and app, and 2 years ago, realistically, it would cost $100,000. That's just the truth. So now, and usually it would be like 9 months. That's kind of standard, like 2 years ago. So this is the standard. You hire a bunch of developers, they work on it for 9 months. And is there a guarantee that's going to work? No, it's probably not going to work. Welcome to business. And now you have something where you can probably build it in a month or two, and you can build an MVP in a couple days, at least a wireframe of it and a landing page. You can get beta testers really fast for pretty much anything. So you can do it with Famous for 1 to 2 months and for, let's say, 50 bucks a month or whatever your thing is. Let's just do the math here. And your goal, the reason why you're willing to spend, because people used to do this, spend $100,000, is they're like, oh, I want this like $10 million software, this $10 million app. So if that's still the goal, here's you 2 years ago. You have to hire someone, pay them $100,000 or more, 9 months, because you're trying to get a $10 million company. $100,000 is 1% of 10 million. So you're risking 1% of your goal. That makes total sense. Now you have $50 a month and you can do it yourself a lot faster. Or you might get some help. Maybe you pay someone like five or $10,000, but it's 95% cheaper than it was and faster. Or if you want to do it yourself, it's $50 a month. And then someone says, oh, I had to try 3 or 4 softwares to do it. Just think about how crazy this is. They're like, oh, I had to try 4 softwares until I found the answer. It's like, yeah, you paid $200 and you're trying to make a $10 million company. And you're going to complain about that? Yeah, try 7 of them, try 10, try 15. You know what I do when I hire people? I will give people the task and I will pay everyone for the task. So let's say I'm hiring a new editor for Book Daddy or something, and I say, hey, it's $500 to help us edit this book. I'll just pay 5 editors to do the same book. So I'm getting the same thing repeated 5 times. Why? I'm losing money. I'm not, because the pain of hiring the wrong person is worth way more than that extra. This is what it sounds like. People are like, "Oh, I had to pay $50 a month instead of I only wanted to pay 50 instead of 100." Like you're trying to build a $10 million company. All of these numbers is the same as zero. These numbers round to zero. Like if you're trying to make $10 million, 50, 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000, those are all the same number. It's essentially zero if you're trying to get to $10 million. It's like they're all essentially zero risk. $50, $200, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. It's all the same number. Now, that number might not feel the same to you because money is relative to your personal wealth. I do understand that. So I'm not insane. My dad was homeless growing up. My mom's a secretary. I told you I lived in my car to get money. I come from the opposite of money. My grandparents were migrant workers, and my other grandparents were coal miners. So I'm opposite silver spoon. So that's part of the reason why I don't have a lot of patience with this. I understand the idea of $200 is a lot for me. It's fine. But if you're really serious about this big goal, whether it's a lot to you doesn't matter because it's essentially nothing in the big scheme of things. So you got to just get resourceful and figure it out. Or if it's time, it's, oh man, I'm really busy and I have this and I have that and I have this. I get it. Everyone has a different time, but nonetheless, what are you going to do about it? And if you're not going to do it, then just calm down and live a more simple life. It's fine. I get technical about like the last class. It was cost per view and cost per website and blah, blah, blah. And I can get super technical about all of the math and all of the things. And I've done that before, but I've noticed the reason why I wanted to give this class is because I noticed like some conversations in Discord that I just thought were irrational. And it's, you got to just wake yourself up and just be honest. You got to look in the mirror and be like, okay, what am I going to do? And you only have 2 options. Either you're going to fight through it and you're going to say, I'm going to find the answer, even if it takes me 30 hours. You want to change your life and you want to build a business and you want to, okay, then that's fine. If you're not willing to do the 30 hours, then that's the choice you're making. You might not consciously making that decision, but that is the decision you're making. You're saying, I'm not willing to fight through this issue that I'm having with my business for 30 hours. And therefore, on my deathbed, I'm going to be like, yeah, I had this opportunity, but 30 hours was too much for me. So I just spent the next 40 years of my life regretting it. You may never be conscious of that, but that's essentially what's happening. This is why I said you're making these decisions. You are making these decisions. You might not be aware of that's what you're making, but every time you get frustrated and you're like, I quit it, this is too difficult, and this software is too expensive. Anytime you have that energy, that's the decision you're making. You just are. And if you're like, that's too much money, it's okay, cool, then do it yourself. It's one or the other. There is no shortcut. You either figure it out and watch every tutorial. If I were you, I would go through the help and I would literally read every single word of every single help doc. I would go through Discord and I would watch every single one of my videos. I'd watch every single one of Alex's videos. I'd watch every single one of Mark's videos. All of them. What else are you gonna do? Are you serious about your goal? Well, I'm not willing to do that. Someone is. I don't know what to tell you. It's all, I had this problem, but I saw I was gonna join Mark's community, but I saw that it was whatever, and that's a little steep. It's okay, cool. If $100 is too steep, then that's your decision. You're making the decision that you want to make this $10 million company, but you're not willing to spend $100. Okay, cool. That's your decision. But just be honest with yourself. That's an illogical decision. David asked, do you think it's a good idea to launch a worse or simpler idea? 100%. You don't even know what worse or simpler is. So let me be a little confrontational with you. Let me read between the lines of what you're saying. Worse or simpler is that you have a vision in your brain of what you think it should be and what people are going to want and what people are going to like, but you don't know that until you go to the market. You don't know. This is what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product. And even last week, I talked about minimum viable feature, not even minimum viable product, minimum viable feature. This is what problem do I solve for whom and how do I solve it uniquely? That's what a business is. And that unique part is in comparison to all my other competitors, what is the one feature the consumer or the user will experience with my software or my app or whatever it is that's different than the competitors? And that feature plus the standard expected features within that genre or within that industry, that's it. That's all you need. You need the absolute base plus the feature that makes you unique. And that's it. You don't even know. Simpler might be better. Worse might be better. You got to get data. This is called CDR, customer driven response. You need to get in the arena as fast as possible because whatever you think in your head is usually not the answer. The number of times that I've launched a company and I'm like, oh yeah, this is people are going to love this and blah, blah, and then I'm just totally wrong. It's like, I'm always wrong. You got to let the customers tell you. Enoch. That's a cool name. I know this got deep and I was like DNA and purpose of your life and why you're doing everything that you're doing. Honestly, I think it's important because at the end of the day, everything that you want is on the other side of actions. That's really it. If you think of yourself as like a robot and you're just like doing things, you're just making decisions. The problem is probably deeper than super base because the problem is that you haven't already solved that problem. It's unaware of what's happening because I know how I feel right now is I feel more powerful than I've ever felt. And I feel like things are cheaper than they've ever been. And so it's exciting. Sometimes we don't even realize the power of something that we learned because we didn't connect it to something that we'll learn in the future. The way that what learning is essentially a new piece of information that's connected to an old piece of information. This has happened to me so many times where I've read something or listened to something and I was like, take it or leave it, not that big of a deal, whatever. I'm not mad that I did it because I was trying to find some more knowledge to improve my life, but maybe I was a little disappointed or whatever. It wasn't that great. But then 6 months later, I learned something else and it amplifies that old thing and I make a connection. I'm like, oh, now I see why that was valuable. And so it's interesting. You never know. It's like the butterfly effect. Sometimes things happen in your life and you're like, oh my God, if I wouldn't have taken that taxi that one day and been late to the blah, blah, blah. And 7 years later, you're like, I can't believe that seemingly insignificant thing or seemingly meaningless thing was not important or was so important. And I think the same thing applies to the things that we learn. Sometimes we don't know how important it is until later. I always felt like I was called for something greater and I was willing to do what was necessary in order to fulfill that destiny. But just generally like self-development books. I really like all of Ryan Holiday's series. Like ego is the enemy, the obstacle is the way, stillness is the key, courage is calling. All of his books are really good. Extreme Ownership is a really good book. It's dark if you don't like military stuff, but Extreme Ownership was very good. Anything by Tony Robbins, I think, is really solid still. He holds up. I've read 500 business self-development books, and Tony Robbins is still very good. Yeah, lots of good stuff. I told my wife, she knows what this means. I tell her that there's moments that time no longer exists. And what that means for me and my wife is that I've found something. It happens rarely. It happens maybe once a year where there's something, usually it's a software, but it could be like a new marketing system or new campaign, or maybe I hired someone important or something. And I tell essentially I'm not going to have any schedule, meaning that I'm going to work on this thing until I pass out. And then I'm going to wake up and then I will start working on the thing until I pass out. And the only breaks I'll have is usually she'll just bring me food. That's the truth. And the first 3 weeks that Famous came out, I probably was working on it for 12 to 14 hours a day, literally, for 7 days a week. When you find something, you're like, okay, let me become an expert at this. And I know, oh, this is going to take 50 hours for me to become an expert at this or 100 hours. And I'm like, all right, let's just start. Let's get them. And I attend Mark's classes. I attend Alex's classes. I still attend his classes because there might be something that I learn or something that Dave says or something that Terrence says. And maybe I don't learn something, but it's worth it just in case. That's how I think about books too. Oh, is that a good book? How many books did you read this week? And if the answer is none, then the problem is not which book. The problem is that you're not reading. But it's nice to see you guys. Have a good weekend, guys. Cheers. Bye bye.